In the decades since the guns of World War II fell silent, history has been written, edited, and sanitized for public record. But deep inside forgotten military archives, beneath seals marked Top Secret, Containment Directive, and classified Level Omega, lies another war entirely, one fought in shadows and buried under the weight of political survival. These are not myths or battlefield legends, but fragments of operations erased from memory. Failed experiments, vanished convoys, and coded transmissions that never stopped. Each document, each whispered report, pulls at a thread of a far darker truth. That the war never truly ended, it only changed its shape. Chapter 1. Operation Winterglass, the Arctic Listening Post. In December 1944, under the endless twilight of the polar night, a small detachment of Allied signals officers was deployed to the Svalbard archipelago north of mainland Norway. Officially, their mission was routine. Establish a weather observation post to assist naval convoys traveling between Britain and Murmansk. Unofficially, the installation was classified under the codename Operation Winterglass. The files, stamped by the British War Office and cross-referenced with the Special Operations Executive, SOE, reveal the true nature of the site, a forward interception station meant to monitor experimental Luftwaffe communications, reportedly bouncing through the upper magnetic layers of the Arctic Circle station. Halvøy was constructed hastily from prefabricated Quonset huts and reinforced with Norwegian laborers who were told little of its purpose. The team consisted of 8 personnel, 5 radio operators, 2 cryptographers, and 1 commanding officer, Captain Raymond Holloway of the Royal Corps of Signals. Supplies were delivered by a converted trawler, the HMS Thistlemore, which disappeared in February 1945 under unknown circumstances. Its last transmission mentioned unusual interference, rhythmic in nature, followed by static that continued for 17 minutes before the signal cut off. By early March, Station Halvøy began receiving anomalous broadcasts on the 42.6 MHz band, frequencies typically reserved for Luftwaffe navigation beacons. However, the signal did not match known German patterns. Instead, it pulsed in triplets like a heartbeat, followed by fragments of what Holloway's team described as vocalized metallic resonance. The station's logbook, recovered decades later from a Ministry of Defense archive in Portsmouth, contains the chilling entry dated 9 March 1945. Transmission continues nightly. Origin indeterminate. Possible coded sequence, possibly human voice. Operator Svensson reports whispering beneath tone layer. Ordered total silence. After the German capitulation in May, contact with Halvøy ceased entirely. When a Royal Navy vessel attempted to re-establish communications that summer, no response was received. Aerial reconnaissance in July revealed the base intact, generators running, but no personnel visible. It was assumed they had succumbed to exposure or had been evacuated without proper record. The Admiralty classified the site as lost under polar conditions, file number G4161, and the case was closed. But that should have been the end of it. It wasn't. In 1949, during the height of post-war Arctic surveillance, a Soviet meteorological flight out of Murmansk intercepted a transmission on a nearly identical frequency. The same triplet pulse, the same metallic undertone. The coordinates matched the original Halvøy position, though the outpost had long since been buried under ice and snow. Soviet archives, declassified briefly in 1991, include a partial transcript from pilot Lieutenant Boris Andreev. Signal emanates from ice shelf region, constant amplitude, sounds like breathing under static. British intelligence responded by issuing an internal memorandum titled Containment Protocol, Winterglass, recommending all reference to the operation be expunged from open files. The document, signed by Rear Admiral C.E. Bennett, includes the ominous line, "Residual transmissions remain active. Maintain radio silence until further directive." No further directive was ever found. In the 1970s, a Norwegian geological expedition near Ny-Ålesund unearthed corroded remnants of British military hardware, field rations, signal wire, and a cracked vacuum tube engraved with RCS-45. Among the debris was a frost-damaged reel of magnetic tape labeled Test 11B. The audio, partially restored by technicians at the University of Oslo in 1983, contained nearly 5 minutes of faint background noise interspersed with 3 distinct words, spoken in English but distorted by feedback. Still operational. Still listening, experts from NATO's communications division reviewed the file, but dismissed it as artifact contamination from tape degradation. Yet privately, one officer admitted the modulation pattern was unlike anything man-made of that era. The reel was subsequently classified and stored in the NATO archives in Brussels, where it remains inaccessible. Decades later, in 2001, during a routine magnetic survey of the Barents Sea for offshore drilling, researchers detected an unexplained frequency spike identical to the one recorded at Halvøy in 1945. The Norwegian Polar Institute cross-referenced it with Allied wartime frequency allocations and confirmed the match. When the signal was triangulated, it originated from beneath approximately 400 meters of ice, the same coordinates marked as Site Halvøy. The broadcast persisted for 11 hours, then vanished. Some analysts propose it was a natural geomagnetic resonance. Others suspect it was a relic of Cold War espionage equipment. But the classified files of Operation Winterglass suggest something stranger. The final page of Captain Holloway's recovered field journal, written in shaky pencil, reads simply, "Transmission complete. Instructions received. We will stay." To this day, the British government has never acknowledged Operation Winterglass in any public record. The coordinates of Station Halvøy remain redacted in official maps, marked only with a notation: Environmental Hazard Zone, Restricted Access. Local fishermen, however, still tell stories of nights when their radios pick up whispers through the static, repeating that same faint pattern of triplets. The ghost of a forgotten signal that refuses to fade beneath the ice. Chapter 2: The Dresden Vault, Shadow of Unit 88. When Allied bombers reduced Dresden to ashes in February 1945, few believed anything could have survived beneath the inferno. Yet amid the collapse of the old city, a discovery was made that would trouble intelligence circles for decades. An underground facility hidden beneath the Reichsbank building, shielded by reinforced concrete and camouflaged blast doors. American engineers from the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, attached to the US Third Army, were the first to enter. What they found inside did not match any known registry of German military or civilian departments. Every crate, file, and specimen carried the same insignia, a stylized double 8 woven within an SS rune. The logs identified it as Abteilung 88, or Unit 88. A Waffen-SS research branch so obscure that even post-war intelligence struggled to prove its existence. Initial reports described the vault as a self-contained research complex, complete with filtration systems, sealed storage, and a communications terminal linked to an unknown transmitter frequency. The air smelled of disinfectant and ozone. Steel racks lined the walls, filled with cylinders of liquid nitrogen and lead-sealed glass vials, labeled only with chemical symbols and code numbers. One section, behind a collapsed bulkhead, contained metal tables affixed with restraint clasps and overhead lamps bearing Reichswehr medical markings. It was clear the vault had been a laboratory, but for what kind of research? No one could say. Technical Sergeant Robert Lang of the US Signal Corps, who participated in cataloguing the site, later testified under closed session that a series of film canisters had been recovered and immediately classified. He claimed to have viewed fragments showing human figures inside test chambers exposed to bursts of intense light. The official inventory lists those reels as incinerated in accidental fire, though the temperature logs show no evidence of combustion. The films vanished, along with 10 crates of experimental chemicals and 2 armored personnel carriers worth of documents. Within days, the Soviet NKVD arrived in Dresden under post-war jurisdiction agreements. American units were ordered to withdraw from the site. The handover was formal, but observers noted the Soviets seemed unusually familiar with the vault's layout, as if briefed beforehand. When the area was reopened years later under the German Democratic Republic, no trace of the original vault remained. It had been sealed, flooded, and paved over during reconstruction. The coordinates today correspond to a quiet intersection near the rebuilt Frauenkirche, though city maintenance blueprints indicate an unmapped sublevel directly beneath. For years, the existence of Unit 88 was dismissed as a Cold War myth. Yet in 1952, a British liaison officer attached to the Allied Control Council discovered a reference to Abt Dont 88 correspondence in a classified Soviet report. The file, labelled Project Morgenrot, meaning Morning Red, outlined an experimental collaboration between German and Japanese researchers. Cross-referencing names revealed a connection to Dr. Shiro Ishii of Unit 731, the infamous Biological Warfare Division in Manchuria. The Dresden facility, it appeared, had been designated as the European node for parallel research, combining biological endurance, studies with chemical weapon testing under the pretext of thermal resilience experiments, a declassified memorandum from the OSS archives. Dated August 1946 references a shipment of biological samples routed from Yokohama to Lübeck in 1944 under diplomatic exemption. The cargo manifest reads simply, Organic Media, High Temperature Series. Analysts now suspect this was part of the same program. The Soviet Union's silence regarding the vault's contents only deepens the mystery. When interrogators at Nuremberg questioned captured SS officer Dr. Heinrich Feldmann, formerly attached to the Reich Main Security Office, he invoked the codename Morgenrot repeatedly. The sunrise will continue, he said, refusing further explanation. His testimony was redacted before release. Years later, during the East German Stasi's consolidation of wartime archives, fragments of Abteilung 88 documentation resurfaced. One document, partially burned, contained a chemical formula resembling early organosilicate compounds later used in heat shielding and radiation protection. Another referred cryptically to test substrate omega-7, exhibiting abnormal retention under simulated plasma discharge. None of these findings appear in any official scientific record of the period. In 1968, a British journalist named Howard Merton, investigating rumours of Allied war crimes cover-ups, published an article titled "The Vault Beneath Dresden." Within weeks, he was found dead in his London flat, officially of cardiac arrest. His notes, later obtained by his editor, describe a source within the Bundesarchiv who mentioned a Soviet convoy transporting 12 sealed containers from Dresden to Minsk, May 1945. A search for the convoy manifest revealed nothing. The serial numbers listed did not match any Soviet or German equipment registry. During a 1990 excavation of Dresden's Old Town to repair sewer lines, workers uncovered a rusted SS field locker buried under 6 meters of concrete. Inside were brittle pages of log entries written in pencil, dated February 11-12, 1945, just days before the bombings. The entries are brief but chilling. Chamber 4 failure. Subjects expired within 30 seconds. Adjusting coolant parameters. Dr. Koenig insists on full discharge test before evacuation. Another line, smeared by moisture, reads, "Orders received from Morgenrot Command. Secure specimens. Burn remaining files." The journal ends abruptly mid-sentence. Experts today remain divided on what specimens meant. Some believe it referred to test animals, others to human subjects taken from nearby forced labor camps. A post-war US Army medical analysis of tissue samples found in Dresden lists anomalous cellular crystallization under high thermal exposure, unlike any known reaction from conventional weaponry. Yet the report was buried under the category Unverified Anomalies, file closed. The last surviving witness with first-hand access to the vault, a former Soviet interpreter named Tatiana Markova, gave a brief interview in 1993. Her statement, translated from Russian, is sparse but haunting. It was not a laboratory. It was a tomb for something they wanted to wake. She died 2 weeks later under unclear circumstances. Her personal papers, seized by German intelligence, have never been released. To this day, historians comb through fragmentary wartime records searching for proof of Abteilung 88 or Project Morgenrot. What remains is a tangle of inconsistencies, erased names, missing manifests, and whispers of a program that transcended both science and morality. The Allies sealed their own files under Directive 317B, marked never to be reopened. The Dresden Vault is now a shopping district, bright and orderly. But below, under the reconstructed streets, the soil still carries traces of mercury, calcium oxide, and unidentifiable organic compounds, silent testimony to an experiment the world was never meant to see. Chapter 3. Red Mercury and the Ghost Convoy. In April 1945, as the Third Reich collapsed from all sides, the roads of Bohemia filled with the chaos of retreating German columns, looted treasures, and last-ditch evacuations. Amid this confusion, a convoy of Wehrmacht trucks departed from Prague under sealed orders from the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, marked Stufe Schwarz, the highest secrecy classification short of Hitler's personal authorization. The lead vehicle bore the insignia of the 6th SS Mountain Division Nord, but the manifest, found years later in a partially burned Czech resistance archive, was handwritten in red ink and contained a single cryptic word beside each line item: Rotquecksilber, Red Mercury. American intelligence officers who reviewed the document in 1946 noted that the handwriting matched that of SS Sturmbannführer Emil Weiss, a chemical engineer attached to Peenemünde during the later V-weapons programs. Weiss vanished in May 1945, presumed killed during the Soviet advance, but his name appears again in a post-war CIA index under Subject Exfiltration to South America, Status Unverified. What he was transporting and why remains one of the strangest mysteries of the war's final days. According to Czech resistance reports, the convoy left Prague at dawn on April 16th and consisted of 9 trucks and 2 armored escorts. They traveled under radio silence through Plzeň and toward the Bavarian border. One partisan, Jan Hruby, wrote in his post-war deposition that the trucks carried lead-lined barrels, loaded at night from a German research compound near Vysočany, known for handling radio components and high-density materials. Hruby claimed his group attempted an ambush near Rokycany, but withdrew after one barrel cracked open, releasing a red vapor that burned the skin. His wounds were consistent with severe chemical exposure, though no known weapon agent matched the description. The convoy's last confirmed sighting occurred near Berchtesgaden on April 27th, where local villagers saw a column of trucks entering a tunnel complex carved into the mountain, part of the Obersalzberg defensive network used to safeguard Nazi high command. 2 days later, when American units reached the area, the tunnel had collapsed in a massive explosion. No remains of the trucks or personnel were ever recovered. The site was sealed, and radiation meters used during the survey registered minor irregularities, dismissed at the time as instrument malfunction. In the decades following, the legend of the ghost convoy took on a life of its own. Some claimed the trucks carried stolen gold, others said experimental fuel for an unfinished superweapon. But the most persistent rumor revolved around red mercury, a compound alleged to possess both radioactive and explosive potential, tied to secret Nazi nuclear experiments. Declassified OSS cables between London and Washington from late 1945 contain multiple references to substance RM22, described as a dense liquid of unknown composition believed to catalyze uranium decay. Allied physicists reviewing captured German research dismissed it as pseudoscience. Still, the references continued to appear in intelligence communications well into the Cold War. In 1961, a classified CIA memo titled RM Recovery Berchtesgaden Sector resurfaced during a review of legacy files. The memo referenced anomalous gamma radiation detected near an abandoned mine shaft close to the same coordinates as the lost convoy. Field agents collected soil and water samples, which showed traces of mercury isotope Hg203, an unstable isotope not naturally occurring in the region. The memo ended abruptly with the phrase, "source compromised." Seal the file. Parallel Soviet records from the same year, unearthed in 1992 by Russian historians, describe a GRU reconnaissance team dispatched to the Bavarian Alps to investigate residual activity in former German facility. The team leader's final report, marked Confidential Technical Division, includes a single line before the rest of the text is blacked out. The sample glows faintly, even when sealed. The Soviet Union's continued research into high-density isotopic materials throughout the 1960s may trace its origins to that find. Meanwhile, in 1974, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, BND, received an anonymous package containing a deteriorated German field notebook. The cover bore the SS insignia and the initials EW. Inside were crude sketches of containment vessels, energy flux readings, and a recurring symbol: 2 concentric circles bisected by a vertical line. A marginal note written in English read, "The heart must remain cold to contain it." Laboratory analysis of the notebook confirmed it was authentic to the 1940s. Its contents were classified under Geheimhaltungsstufe 1 Warmunds, effectively sealing it from public view. Scientific curiosity surrounding red mercury peaked during the late Cold War, when rumors spread that both the United States and the Soviet Union were attempting to rediscover or reproduce it. Declassified intelligence correspondence from 1984 reveals that American physicists at Los Alamos analyzed substance samples provided by German source, describing an unusually high-density fluid that resisted conventional chemical analysis. The report concluded that while the sample likely contained mercury and antimony oxide, its electromagnetic properties remain unexplained. The source who provided the sample disappeared 2 weeks later in West Berlin. Survivor accounts from the war also point to a darker truth. In 1947, Czech investigator Karel Zelenka interviewed an SS mechanic captured near Linz who claimed to have serviced the convoy trucks. According to his statement, the barrels were kept under refrigeration, and guards were ordered to maintain a constant temperature below 5 degrees Celsius. If it warms, the man said, the air turns to fire. His testimony was dismissed as delusional, but his file contains an attached note from a US Army technical officer who wrote, "His description of containment aligns with Peenemunde's Project A9, A10 fuel protocols." Modern analysts suspect red mercury may have been a code name for an experimental stabilizer or explosive catalyst designed for nuclear detonation testing. Yet no definitive evidence has ever surfaced to confirm its existence. The only known remnants, trace mercury isotopes and unverified eyewitness accounts, remain buried under layers of official secrecy and speculation. In 2001, a geological survey team working for a German mining consortium conducted ground-penetrating radar scans of the Berchtesgaden tunnels. They discovered a sealed chamber approximately 30 meters below the surface. When engineers drilled a borehole to insert a camera probe, the feed cut out within seconds, and radiation alarms briefly spiked before returning to normal. The team was ordered to halt operations, citing hazardous environmental materials. The official report lists the site as Restricted Historical Zone. Locals still call it Der Rote Atem, the red breath. If the convoy carried nothing more than experimental chemicals, its disappearance should have been a footnote in wartime chaos. Instead, it sits in the margins of intelligence files across 3 continents, its presence whispered through a half-century of denials. Every so often, an unmarked crate or cylinder turns up in an archive basement, its contents sealed with wax, bearing only a stamped serial code, RM22. None have been publicly opened. And somewhere beneath the Alps, the mountain holds its silence, a tomb for a convoy that vanished without a trace, leaving behind only scorched rock and a word scrawled in an engineer's fading hand, ignition. Chapter 4, The Prague Transmissions, Operation Paper Veil. In the chaotic reconstruction of post-war Europe, as nations reshaped borders and secrets shifted hands, the Allied intelligence services turned their eyes toward a new enemy, the Soviet sphere. Among the countless classified operations of this uneasy peace was one buried under multiple code designations, Operation Paper Veil. Its purpose was never publicly acknowledged, but declassified fragments from the British National Archives, file Pro MI629H7, suggest it was a covert mission to intercept Soviet defectors attempting to smuggle captured Axis. Research through Czechoslovakia in 1946, it was during this mission that the strange transmissions began, messages that defied classification, logic, and eventually, time. The first recorded intercept occurred on June 17, 1946. A British listening post stationed near the village of Bodenech detected a faint signal on the 2941 MH frequency, a band typically used by Soviet field radios. The transmission began at exactly EO2 13 hours and lasted for 7 minutes. It was not in Russian, German, or English, but a blend of all 3, as if 3 languages had been layered atop one another. The operator, Sergeant Colin Webb, logged the following: message sequence indeterminate, word fragments, phoenix, continuation, array, voice distorted by alternating pulse modulation, possibly Morse overlap. He forwarded the tape to Section D of MI6's Signal Analysis Bureau. The recording was marked unresolved, type unknown. By late 1946, similar signals had been detected from multiple stations across Europe: Hamburg, Rotterdam, and Copenhagen, all triangulating back toward Prague. Each followed the same pattern: broadcast at irregular intervals, no clear source, no consistent power signature. American intelligence soon joined the analysis under a joint directive known as Echo Line. The name paper veil first appeared in correspondence between London and Washington later that year, referring specifically to the Prague anomaly. In December 1946, a small Allied reconnaissance team was dispatched to Czechoslovakia under diplomatic cover to locate the signal origin. Their investigation led them to a derelict radio tower on the outskirts of Prague's Žižkov district. The tower, a pre-war structure formerly used by German communication units, had been abandoned since 1945. Local witnesses reported hearing static and metallic humming at night, though the power grid in that area had been offline for months. When agents entered the tower, they found it cold, dust-covered, but intact, except for one detail. The equipment inside was active, powered by a generator that had not been refueled in over a year. The team dismantled the transmitters, transported them to an MI6 safe house, and reported no anomalies except one. All clocks and watches in the vicinity had lost 12 minutes during the operation. The field report dated 19th December 1946 concludes with the phrase, "possible magnetic flux interference. Further study required." But within a week, the signals resumed from a different frequency band, this time traced to a remote forest near Karlovy Vary. When Czech police investigated the location, they found only a scorched patch of earth and melted remnants of copper wiring. Declassified American NSA files from 1958 reference the Prague transmissions again, noting that they reappeared briefly during the Hungarian uprising of 1956. The intercept logs show a curious pattern. Every reappearance coincided with major Cold War flashpoints: Berlin, Cuba, Prague, 68. As though the signal responded to geopolitical tension. The NSA analysis lists the transmissions under unknown origin, non-hostile. Though one analyst annotated in pencil, the system might not be transmitting to us, it might be transmitting through us. Soviet interest in the transmissions was equally intense. KGB archives, briefly opened in the 1990s, contain fragments of Project Zhar, a counterpart investigation to Paper Veil. One report from 1961 describes radiophonic interference in state, frequencies consistent with pre-war German encryption. Another mentions the term Array 7, believed to refer to a network of prototype transmitters developed by the Reichspostministerium in late 1940s, designed to use atmospheric ionization as a relay. If true, it would explain the strange persistence of the signal long after its physical origin had been destroyed. However, Soviet engineers noted one troubling anomaly. The signal contained timing irregularities, inconsistent with standard radio delay. As one document states, the interval drift suggests source instability or displacement beyond Earth reference. The line was later redacted. Throughout the 1970s, Western monitoring stations continued to record intermittent bursts resembling the paper veil pattern. One of the clearest came from RAF Fillingdales, a ballistic missile early warning site in North Yorkshire. The transmission lasted only 90 seconds, but the decoded output formed a repeating phrase in fragmented English. Continuation directive. Hold line. Array active. The voice, calm, male, emotionless, was confirmed not to match any known database of wartime German or Soviet radio operators. In 1978, the signal appeared one final time, this time over the North Sea. A British trawler, the St. Bridget, reported interference disrupting its navigation equipment at approximately 03 des. Crew members described a voice of metal and wind coming from their shortwave band, repeating numbers followed by the word Phoenix. When triangulated, the source appeared to move, airborne, traveling west at approximately 400 knots. No aircraft was detected on radar. Civil Aviation and NATO Air Command both denied any flight in that corridor. In 1981, an internal MI6 report attempted to close the file. It summarized Paper Veil as probable Cold War PSYOP contamination, possibly Soviet disinformation. Yet appended to the report was a classified addendum written by an unnamed analyst. It included coordinates for the original Žižkov tower site, now demolished, and a transcription from the earliest intercept, decoded with modern equipment. The message, translated into clear English, reads, "Directive received. Hold array. Await continuation. Transmission complete. Time unbroken." The meaning of those words remains debated among historians. Some believe they referred to an unfinished German communication experiment, perhaps a failed attempt at long-range encrypted messaging through the ionosphere. Others suspect a more chilling possibility, that the array, whatever it was, had succeeded, continuing to operate autonomously beyond human oversight. Today, no trace of the original paper veil equipment exists. The last known tape of the transmissions was stored in the MI6 archives until 1991, when it was reportedly transferred to a private contractor for digital preservation. The contractor went bankrupt in 1993. The tapes have not been seen since, and yet, on certain nights, amateur radio enthusiasts along the Baltic coast claim to hear faint, rhythmic patterns in the static. 3 short bursts, 1 long pause, then a single word repeated in a metallic whisper, Phoenix. Whether it is interference, coincidence, or the echo of a forgotten network still pulsing through the atmosphere, no one can say, only that the voice sounds old, older than the war, and that it never really stopped. Chapter 5. The Black Vault of Königsberg. In the closing months of World War II, Königsberg, once a proud Prussian capital, had become a city of ghosts. Constant air raids by the Royal Air Force had reduced its Gothic spires to rubble. By April 1945, the Red Army surrounded the city, determined to crush what remained of German resistance. But as Soviet forces advanced through the ruins, they stumbled upon something far stranger than a battlefield. A reinforced underground complex hidden beneath the burned remains of the Albertina University Library. The entrance, concealed by collapsed masonry, led to a sub-level no Allied intelligence service had recorded. The soldiers who first entered it would later call it the Black Vault. According to declassified Soviet military reports from the archives of the Ministry of Defense, the vault stretched 3 levels deep, reinforced with tungsten steel beams and blast doors. Inside were thousands of canisters, lead cases, and microfilm reels labeled with the emblem of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht and a cipher OKW Bio 46. The initial Soviet assessment concluded that the site contained scientific archives evacuated from Berlin. But further inspection revealed documents written in languages beyond German, Latin, Russian, even archaic forms of Polish, and charts detailing biological field modulation experiments, magnetic resonance tests, and something labeled Project Umbra. Among the papers recovered was the name of Dr. Erich Naumann, a biophysicist and SS officer attached to the Ahnenerbe, the Nazi organization devoted to pseudo-archaeology and ancestral research. Officially, Naumann had been executed in 1946 for war crimes. Yet Soviet intelligence soon realized that the Naumann mentioned in these documents was not the same man tried at Nuremberg. This Naumann had vanished in 1945, last seen evacuating materials from Königsberg under direct orders from Reichsleiter Heinrich Himmler himself. His field journal, retrieved in fragments, contains chilling passages. Field coherence achieved for 0.8 seconds. Subject disintegration localized. Retain frequency. Vital data must not be lost. Another page, smeared with what appears to be blood, ends abruptly with, "The pattern persists without us." The Soviet Engineering Corps sealed the vault and established a temporary command post above it. But within 48 hours, the first anomaly occurred. According to an internal KGB technical report dated 11th April 1945, electrical instruments in the immediate area began to malfunction. Compasses spun uncontrollably, and radio units emitted steady pulses on a 17 kHz frequency. The report describes low-frequency vibrations emanating from beneath the structure, followed by unexplained headaches among personnel. When engineers attempted to remove one of the lead-lined containers, the temperature inside the vault dropped by nearly 10 degrees Celsius in under a minute. The order was given to abandon the site. By the 1950s, the Soviets had completely sealed the Königsberg vault, reclassifying it under Military Containment Zone Level 5. Official maps erased its coordinates, and the area was renamed Kaliningrad. Western analysts suspected the site contained nuclear materials or evidence of Nazi biological warfare. But in 1967, during the Cold War's height, a classified GRU memo resurfaced in Moscow marked Priority Biofield Study. The document referred to ongoing research using specimens recovered from Königsberg, transported to a facility near Novosibirsk. The attached photographs, later leaked by a defected archivist in 1994, showed what appeared to be organic material preserved in cylindrical glass containers. suspended in translucent amber fluid. The specimens were vaguely human in form but distorted, their skin discolored, as if exposed to intense radiation or electrical discharge. A margin note scrawled in Cyrillic reads, "Tissue remains responsive to current. No neural activity detected." The following line, underlined twice, adds, "Do not attempt communication." During the late 1970s, Western intelligence analysts detected increased Soviet traffic referencing KCEL, a research group, associated with Umbra continuation studies. A CIA technical report dated 1978 summarizes intercepted communication between two scientists discussing biogenic field, harmonics, and a Königsberg sample. The author's note at the end reads, "Subject appears to exhibit coherent resonance despite cellular death. Potential energy source remains unexplained." The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 opened cracks in the iron wall of secrecy. For a brief period, portions of the Kaliningrad archives were declassified. Among the recovered materials was an inventory list titled OKW 46, Remaining Assets. Only one line item was not redacted. Specimen preserved, containment active. The file abruptly ends there. When journalists attempted to locate the storage facility referenced by the coordinates, they found only an abandoned military warehouse, its sublevel flooded. Locals reported that during power outages, the water in the basement glowed faintly for several seconds before fading. The German Federal Archives in Koblenz contain an unrelated but perhaps connected record. A 1944 Ahnenerbe memo from Naumann to Himmler referencing energetic transfer between living systems under extreme duress. It speaks of a new biological weapon, non-lethal yet total. Analysts believe this could refer to the same line of research found in Königsberg. The memo concludes with the phrase, "We have glimpsed the geometry of vitality itself. It cannot be destroyed, only buried." Throughout the 1990s, both Russian and Western intelligence operatives quietly investigated what became known as the Black Vault. Former KGB officer Viktor Glazov, interviewed in 1998, claimed that the Soviets had attempted to relocate the remaining contents in 1953 but halted, after several workers experienced severe convulsions and hallucinations when entering the sealed lower chamber. "It was not radiation," Glazov said. "It was like being inside a storm that breathed." He described the sound of rhythmic pulsations, similar to a heartbeat, echoing from within the walls. His testimony was dismissed as psychological stress. Modern historians now suspect that the Black Vault was part of a broader Nazi program exploring what they called Lebensfeldtheorie, the theory of life fields, combining fringe biology with emerging electromagnetic research. Whether Naumann's experiments were genuinely scientific or driven by ideology remains uncertain. Yet, the documents recovered from Königsberg indicate a chilling precision. Diagrams of human nervous systems mapped to oscillation patterns, energy grids overlaying anatomical drawings, and formulae referencing frequency persistence post-mortem. One phrase appears repeatedly in Naumann's notes, scrawled in both German and Latin, "Das Feld stirbt nicht." The field does not die. In 2010, during renovations of Kaliningrad's underground infrastructure, construction crews unearthed what appeared to be an entrance shaft sealed with Soviet concrete. Before authorities could examine it, the shaft was recovered and fenced off by military order. No official statement was released. However, leaked geophysical scans show a cavity approximately 30 meters below street level, roughly matching the vault's documented dimensions. Independent researchers petitioned for access but were denied. A month later, their lead coordinator, Professor Marek Lewandowski, was found dead in his hotel room, his notes missing. The only surviving page from his journal reads, "Frequency identical to 17 kHz. The vault still breathes." Today, Kaliningrad's citizens walk above layers of history that remain sealed beneath their feet. The exact nature of what the Soviets called Specimen 1 remains a state secret. Yet every few years, strange events ripple through the region. Unexplained electromagnetic disturbances, bursts of low-frequency radio noise, and power grid failures centered around the old university quarter. The Russian government dismisses it all as urban legend. But one cannot ignore the pattern, the same 17 kHz signal, the same pulsing intervals, the same silence that follows. The vault remains sealed, but for how long? Because in the words found on the final page of Naumann's recovered notes, Containment is a temporary measure. The field remembers. History does not bury itself. It is buried by those who fear what it might reveal. From the Arctic echoes of Operation Winter Glass to the sealed laboratories beneath Königsberg, each fragment points to a single, unsettling conclusion. The past did not rest when the war ended. Files were shredded, witnesses silenced, coordinates erased, yet the signals persist. The heartbeat beneath the ice, the voices in the static, the vaults that hum behind concrete walls. Perhaps they are only remnants of paranoia, coincidences of history, or perhaps, somewhere beneath the archives and ash, the war continues quietly, unfinished, unacknowledged, waiting to be rediscovered by those who dare to listen.